Alright, these techniques took me years of production to finally learn. And they were discovered through some weird experimenting. I don't want you to have to go through all of the trial and error that I did to find these out. So instead, I'm just gonna give them all to you right now. Then you're gonna promise me that you'll watch to the end of the video and that you'll experiment with at least one of these tips, because I want your music production knowledge to grow. Alright, so we're starting off with something pretty weird. This is a melody that I made. There's a ton of layers going on. We got chords and a bass as well. And I added a ton of layers and kind of overcomplicated it on purpose, and you'll see why in just a second. This technique involves taking a melody that you already made, then consolidating it into audio. So let's do that real quick. We'll export it. And once we have the consolidated melody, we're going to take it and put it into a granular synthesis plugin to give it this really weird, unique texture. So let's do that real quick. I'll be loading up Quanta, but you can use any plugin. Then we're just going to take the melody and drag it in here. I will adjust the settings a little bit here, and we can change the randomize a little bit. So if you're not familiar with granular synthesis, all it's doing is just taking audio, in this case it's our melody, and breaking it down into smaller pieces of audio called grains. And then from here we could record this, make it a sample, and then chop up that sample, and then you get a completely different track. So I did that over here actually. I recorded it in, chopped it up, and then added a bass to it, and this is what we got. Something I've never really heard before, and in my opinion it's a lot better than the original melody. So just to compare it, this is the original, and then we got this one. Imagine this as the intro to your track or something. There's a million ways you can go with this. So when I first started producing, around 8 or 9 years ago, I'd listen to other producers' tracks and sometimes just notice how the kick sounds so good. And as a producer, this has probably happened to you too, right? Where you're listening to a song and the kick just hits so perfectly to the point where you wish you had that exact kick sample. Well, you can, because there's a specific method that we can use to steal any kick from any track. Here's how. This is an example track from a sample pack that I made about a year ago. And let's say we want to steal the kick from this track. The first thing we're going to do is match the BPM. I know that this track is at 150 beats per minute because I made it, right? The reason I'm not using another producer's track is because I don't want a copyright strike. But anyway, the reason we match the BPM is because it's going to sync to the grid here, and then it's a lot easier. So then we're going to find exactly where the kick is, and you can see right here, you can see the transient. So we just need to cut this off, just like that. And we can delete these excess parts. So now we have the kick. And I also have an EQ on this kick. And so you probably know that there are bass frequencies, there are mid frequencies, and then there's high frequencies. This is interesting. The method that we'll be using involves separating each of these frequency ranges and then reconstructing them to create the original kick sample in the track. So let's do it. The first thing we'll do is separate the bass. So around 200 hertz, just like that. And then we'll just render out the bass. Once we have the bass rendered out, it's very straightforward. Then we just separate the mids. So I'll put this around right here. We can go ahead and export this out. And then finally, we got the highs right around there. Now we can export this. And so now we have the lows, the mids, and the highs all separated. We can remove this original sample. All of this together is going to sound like the original track. Now it's just a matter of editing each of these individual pieces. Let's do it. So for the highs, we want to cut all of this out. And we just want the little click right about there. Then for the mids, we can do something like this. And we want to make sure not to let the other elements of the track in. In this case, it's the melody. So we can cut that off. So that's kind of the body of the kick. And we got the lows. Now if we play all the edited parts together, now you have the original kick sample. From here, we could render this out. And now we have a sample that we could use for later. and it sounds just like the original track. So this one is mainly for the melodic bass producers. I have this project I made around 2 or 3 years ago that I recently started reviving. Sounds like this. I know the mix sounds messy and stuff, but this is an older project. Anyway, have you ever listened to artists like Said the Sky or Dabin or Illenium, for example, and just wondered how they get their saws to sound so airy and light, but at the same time powerful? Well, I am nowhere near the level of those producers, but I tried my best to replicate it in this project. So here's how. This will change your music forever. First of all, we have all these main saw layers here. And then down here we have a bunch of like ethereal ambient layers. And these right here is the key. This is what gives it that airy texture that makes it feel kind of ethereal, right? So if we just solo the saws as well as the textures. And so all I have on these textures is just an EQ to fit it into the track, as well as get rid of some frequencies I didn't like, some compression, and some reverb. Applying these type of pads and layering it with your track will give it that sound. This is the key right here. So this is a beat that I made with my friend a little while ago, and this is one of my signature techniques here. So now I'm gonna test you. I'm gonna play the original track, and then after I'm gonna play the track with an effect on it. I want you to listen and tell me if you can hear a difference, okay? So here's the original. And now this is with the effect enabled. So it's pretty subtle, but it's one of my most favorite plugins, and it's called Crystallizer. I have an automation clip down here. And so all I did here was take the Crystallizer and apply it to this ARP here. Then I took this mix knob right here, right-clicked, create automation clip, and then you use this automation right here to create this really cool sweep effect. So I'll play it one more time. Now imagine applying this Crystallizer to a bunch of random melodies and then making like 20 of these sweeps, then putting those sounds in a folder for later so that you can use them in your tracks. So in the past 7 or 8 months, I started this YouTube channel. I've been teaching more people music production, and even my brother's getting into music. And in the past 8 months, I feel like I've had such a deeper grasp on music production and all the concepts that come with it. And it's because of the things I just told you. When you teach people, you will automatically just get such a deeper understanding of music production. And I'll give you 2 reasons why this is so important that you probably haven't thought about before. Number 1 is just the articulation of the knowledge that you have about music production. So you might be like, what does that mean? If you've always produced by yourself, you haven't even spoken in words what you know about music production. And so with that, there's naturally this gap between your minds and your thoughts about music production and you actually speaking out the words. So when you get into the habit of teaching other people and speaking out loud how compression is done, for example, then you just get such a deeper understanding of it. And at the same time, it destroys limiting beliefs. As producers, we all have our limiting beliefs and we feel imposter syndrome and stuff like that. And so whenever you're able to teach someone something they didn't already know, even if they're an advanced producer, that just destroys the limiting beliefs. Because then you're like, whoa, people actually don't know this. I actually have decent knowledge. So if you have a family member or a friend that wants to get into production, just teach them. It'll be beneficial for them because they'll learn music production a lot faster and won't have to go through all the trial and error that you did. And of course, at the same time, you'll get a deeper understanding of music. So this is about to get interesting. Have you ever wanted to take 2 sounds and morph those 2 together without actually layering the sounds separately? Well, there's this plugin called Visco by Forever 89. And you know in my content that I've talked about how I don't really like showing you new shiny plugins that you can go and buy. But I thought this one was so cool and useful that I just had to show you. We have 2 sounds here, the simple kick, and then we have the huge kick. And so we want to take those 2 sounds and morph them together. All we have to do is use this slider and put it right about there. And then you have a mix of those 2 kicks. The main feature of this plugin is right in the middle, this blob thing that you can literally shape and get some weird results. And so here's another one. We have this snare, and then we have this snare. And so together, they create this, and we can morph it. And the best part is that you can import your own sounds. Now this is probably going to be the weirdest music production tip you've ever heard, and it's called sleep producing. I've been doing this myself for the past 6 months, and it's where you visualize and imagine yourself producing while you're lying in bed waiting to sleep. And the more specifics you can get into, the better. Visualize yourself dragging drums into your DAW, and then arranging a pattern with those drums, and then making some melodies, then applying effects like reverb and distortion, and actually hearing how that affects the sound all in your mind. I'm not sure why. If you have any science on this, feel free to comment it, but it seems like it just trains your mind to be able to spark new ideas on command. Your subconscious begins to learn how to turn the sounds in your head into real music in your DAW. And here's the thing, after practicing this for a little bit, this eventually led me to have random dreams of random scenarios with random tracks and melodies playing. And then I would wake up in the morning to go and produce that track. I have no idea why. It's like taking a cable, plugging it into your head, and then connecting it into FL Studio. So, you've watched to the end of the video. Thank you for that. But bro, just watching music production tutorials won't give you any benefit. If you go try one of these techniques that I just showed you right now, chances are it'll stick with you forever, and that's when your skills will improve. Not by just watching, but by actually acting on what you learn. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you want to, please subscribe. It would help me retire my parents. That's a huge goal I have. Also, you can check the links in the description. Make music now and then think yourself later. Peace.